Hello everyone, it's Octodraws and welcome to Lesson 2, Declension of O stems continued. I'm going to switch up the format a little bit because previously I didn't have anything written on the pages, but now I think it looks a lot better when I do, and I think it's going to be a lot more easy to understand with my notes on it beforehand. I liked how it looked when I was drawing on it so that you could see what I was doing, but I think just having all of the things on the screen just makes it a lot easier. Panas gar, hos legusin, eukleas pater. Toil, so they say, is the father of fame. I tried to line up the words for you a little bit. So you have panos, meaning toil, gar, which does not get translated, hos legusin, so they say, and then pater, the father, eukleas, of fame, because it's in the genitive. You'll notice that there's no translation for there's no Amy in there, like what you would expect, and that's pretty common for Greek. I like that they give you a little note and they tell you that this is from a Euripides fragment, but this is said by literally everyone. Everyone says stuff like this. Everyone loves working really hard in ancient Greece. 8. The persistent accent. The accent of the nominative must be learned by observation. So it's a case-by-case basis. So when you look at a word, you have to look at the nominative, and the accent is going to be there pretty much every time. The accent will remain on the same syllable in the other cases if possible. In acute, on the penult, which is the second to last syllable of a noun of the O declension, or omicron declension, remains on that syllable throughout. As we see with pilos, we have our accent on the penult, which is the second to last, and it's always going to be here. It's never going to change. It's always every form, right through and through, it's going to be on the penultimate, the second to last syllable. An acute accent on the antepenult, which is the third to last syllable, moves to the penult, which is the second to last syllable, when the ultima, the final syllable, is long. One example of this is if we look down here, we'll see anthropos. You can see that it has an accent on the antepenult. Since the final syllable is long, you'll see that the accent gets moved up to the second to last syllable. And it's the same thing with the dative, is that this accent that on the nominative that's on the antepenult moves up to the penult because the omega is long. But then you go, but Octo, what is a long syllable? Well, I'm glad you asked. In Greek, there are two syllables. You have long syllables and you have short syllables. So you know that something is a long syllable because it has a long vowel, like eta or omega, and those will always be long. Or if there's a diphthong, like right here, oi, I, oo, other things like that. So when two vowels come together to make one sound, or if it's long by position. A syllable is long by position when there's two consonants in between each syllable. As you can see with Andra here, you have your alpha, and then you have three consonants, and then a second alpha. And this line marks the syllable break. One thing that you will notice is that when there's a liquid, meaning there's an R sound, so the rho, or an L sound, which is the lambda, they aren't always counted as syllables to make it long by position. Don't worry about that for now. I think that I'm going to do a full video on meter, so that will get covered more in depth later. In the short syllable, they cover everything else. So all the short vowels, alpha, epsilon, iota, omicron, and upsilon. And then just as a side note, syllables are open or closed based on whether they have a consonant at the end. This is open because there's no consonant at the end. And then on, this is closed because there is a consonant at the end. Final oi of the nominative plural is considered short. This will, despite being a diphthong, is always going to be short. Just remember that. It's a very strange rule. And it gives you a nice little example for all of them. So hopefully this is helpful if you want to go through it and memorize it a little bit. It also wants you to inflect hopolemos, but you don't really have to. If you don't like wars, you don't really have to. I don't, personally. The genitive of place from which. The genitive with many prepositions denotes the place from which. And more specifically, it's going to be motion away from. So you're going to be leaving whenever you see something like that. Whenever you see a genitive, you're going to be leaving that location. It gives you this example, ton anthropon pempe, apa tu patamu. He sends the man from the river. You know that it's from because apa tu patamu, you see apa, which is your preposition, tu with a genitive, patamu, also a genitive. So it's from the river, motion away from it. And it gives you a second one with ek, and that's out of. He sends the man out of the river. The Arcadian Gate. The walls of Messini will testify the engineering skill and daring of the victor of Leuctra. Note particularly the central doorpost of this great gate. It is nearly 19 feet long. You can see it right here. And as you can see, I actually visited this, which was kind of cool. I really liked it. Would recommend going. And just for people who aren't familiar, because this book doesn't really want to tell you, Messini is a little town in the Peloponnese. So the Sparta Peninsula in Peloponnese, you have Messini, which is right there. And the Battle of Leuctra, which it also doesn't care to tell you about, was fought on the 6th of July, 371 BCE. It was between the Boeotians and the Thebans, where they defeat Sparta to break Spartan influence in the Peloponnese, which they gained from the Peloponnesian War with Athens. So this was a very huge political shift where Sparta lost its political influence. Sparta loves losing their political influence. Vocabulary: anthropos, ha, man. Latin, homo. Anthropology is the example they give for etymology. I think it's a good one. Study, logos, anthropos, of man. Axios, worthy, worth. Axiom is its example of etymology. I wish that it would include that axios is an adjective that usually comes with a genitive. So it's usually saying you're worthy of something, like some kind of prize. Because in Greek, your worth is determined by material things. Apo, it's a preposition that takes the genitive. It should really say that it attracts the genitive, because it's not apo that's making it genitive. It's this idea that you're moving away from it. And apo, because it's motion away, should take a genitive. See, from, away from. Latin, ablative. It gives you apostle for the etymology, meaning apo, away, and stello, to send, so someone who's sent away. Dikaios, meaning it's an adjective meaning just, like justice, that kind of just. Ek, it's another preposition, so you're going to see the ek form when it's before consonants, and you're going to see the x form when it's before vowels. It's proclitic, which means that it's a word pronounced with so little emphasis that is shortened and forms part of the following word. One example of this in English is when you say y'all, you is proclitic, and it gets elided, that OU, and you just pronounce the y, so y'all. It gives you eclectic as an etymology example. Ek, meaning out of, then lego, not the Lego to speak, but the legging to choose. You're picking from a bunch of things. The Hellespont, very important place. You can see up in our map, here it is. Macros, meaning big or long. Macron, meaning the thing that you put over the top and it's big. It indicates a long vowel or long syllable. Mikros, small. Microscopic, small looking, you're looking at little things. And this is a long syllable. You can tell that it's a long syllable. So that's kappa in this row, which is 2 syllables, and it has this marker on top. Usually this would be a short syllable, but it's marked as long, so you know that it's long. This would be a short syllable because this row is a liquid. Polemos, ha, the war. Polemios, hostile, hoi polemioi, enemy. It's kind of strange that they give you the plural and then translate it as a singular, but to each their own. Polemic, pilos, ha, friend, philanthropist. So phil, love, anthropos, man, somebody who loves humankind, a philanthropist. If you're interested in the footnotes, it's going to tell you that this is our second use of the genitive up here, and it's very similar to the Latin ablative because it's usually going to be translated as from, and it's motion away. It likes to assume that most people know Latin, even though most people don't. I don't know why they would do that. Adjectives in Ross usually have the acute on the last syllable, which is the ultima, which is strange because they say last syllable here, but up above they use the word ultima. Translation hints. Learn all words given in vocabularies. Learn all forms as they are presented. Note the significance, so what they indicate, of the various forms. For example, is nominative the subject, genitive is the possession or place from, dative is the indirect object, and the accusative is the direct object. This is by far, I don't know how to put more stars around this, but reading the Greek aloud, noting the word groups, is the best translation hint that it has. For your translation hint, it just wants you to translate for some reason. That's not really much of a hint. So instead, I made this, and it will hopefully help you get through this. First, you want to find your verb. That will help you set yourself up for the rest of the sentence. It will tell you when someone did something and who's doing it. Then you look for your nominative or your subject. After that, you find your direct object or your accusatives. And finally, you find your indirect object, which is your dative usually. Do your best on that. Everything else will just fall into place. Now let's go over some of the exercises. I'm going to give you a moment to pause, go through them yourselves, and then I'm going to go over the answers. A, translate. So what I'm doing here is I'm marking each of the different uses. I would highly recommend marking all of the cases and highlighting them. For example, I highlighted all the accusatives in like magenta and all the nominatives and verbs in blue, and that just helps me memorize what's going on. It doesn't matter which colors you use as long as you're consistent. It will help you memorize the endings very well by highlighting. Tous polemius pausen. Pausen meaning they stop. Tous polemius, the enemies. And we know this is not the subject, and it is in fact a direct object because that us ending, it's accusative. Oh my goodness. Ignore that. I'm the best. I just told everyone to be consistent in what you're doing, and I did not. I was not consistent. They stop, pausen, tous polemius, in the accusative, the enemies. He sends pempe, this is our verb, then we have our direct object, because that's accusative, which is the man, apa to Hellespontu, away from the Hellespont. Hoiadelphoi, which is nominative, the brothers, ason, our verb, were mikroi, small, or short, all of which is nominative, except for ason, because it's a verb. Pampusen, they send tous pilos, the friends, ek to Pasanu, out of the river. Ha Palamos, the war, ain was, Dikaios, just. Even though they say the war was just, it usually isn't. That's very Athenian of them to say that their war is just, and then they're gonna do some really bad things in it. Hoi polemioi, the enemies. We know this is our subject because it's in the nominative with that oi ending. Akusin, our verb, have, axios strategus, worthy generals. Ha strategos, our nominative, the general. Pempe, our verb, sends, tous anthropus, the men, toi adelphoi, to his brother. Hoi anthropoi, akusin axios adelphus. Akusin, they have. Who has? Nominative, hoi anthropoi, the men have, axios adelphus, worthy brothers. B, just complete these. Hoi polemoi, ason macroi. The wars were big, and we know that it's nominative plural because of this article right here. Ton adelpon pempe ek tu patamu. He sends the brother out of the river. So we know that this is accusative because of ton. So this has to be accusative. Ek meaning genitive, so tu patamu, and pempe, that's our verb. Hoi strategoi tous pilus pempusi toi anthropoi. So the generals, and then we have our verb. So we know this is our subject because it is nominative plural. So then we need to put our verb, pempo, third person, plural, and that's our usi ending. Hoi strategoi, the generals, pempusi, send, tous pilus, accusative, direct object, the friends, toi anthropoi, dative, indirect object, to the man. Toi anthropoi, to the man. So it gives us this footnote, and it says, new is usually added to words ending in C before a word beginning with a vowel, or at the end of a sentence. This is called a new movable. And it gives us an example right in here. In number 6, it gives us an example with akusin right there. The reason why there is no new here is because there is a consonant right after. So there's no new because there's a consonant and not a vowel following that word. Pericles, the most brilliant period in Athenian history, is justly called the Age of Pericles. His home was the haunt of sculptor and architect, poet, and philosopher. To him, we owe above all the planning and construction of the matchless Parthenon. Pericles was a pretty cool guy, and sculptor, architect, poet, and philosopher, these are all buzzwords. They're very important words, and they have a lot of things going along with them. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you all in the next video. Remember, be positive, be yourself, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.